Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome to the next in our series of IBTM Meets, where we catch up with industry leaders in the business events industry and really a get to know and an informal conversation with some of the leading lights in our industry. I'm delighted to be joined here today by Melissa Riley, VP of Destination Sales at Washington, DC. So over in the good old US of A. It's great to have you here, Melissa. Thank you so much for taking the time out. Hello and welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for including me in this great project.
No problem. It's a pleasure, as we say, to have you. So as you know, Melissa, we're IBTM Meets is really an opportunity to try and get to know some of the leading lights in our industry, as we said. And it's really sort of an informal catch up and just trying to, get to know people a bit better. So we've got a series of questions. So if it's okay with you, we'll maybe kick off. That's all right.
Let's get started.
Great. So firstly, it's always good to know how people end up in this wonderful industry we work in. I think it's fair to say that certainly from my perspective and many people we talk to, they don't know that they're going to set out in this industry when they do it. And then they join it, love it, and then find it very hard to leave the industry, of course. So tell us a little about your journey into the industry and how you ended up where you are today.
Yeah, I'm actually the counter argument to that. I actually went to university, yes, for hospitality and tourism. I actually did that though by default. I had started off in a major where let's just say that the math expectations were a little bit far above what my capabilities are, and so I was literally going through the course catalog in university and stumbled upon hospitality and tourism. And I had a friend growing up, she was my best friend, and her father worked for a hotel in Washington, DC. And I had the ability to do that, take your children to work day. So I work at a hotel, and I just absolutely thought, it was the best thing ever to eat in the restaurant. And, I'm in very, a young child. And so that led me to study that in university. And part of our requirements was to do an internship between our junior and senior year. And I did that with Marriott. And that's where I actually stumbled in and then started my career in Marriott post school and worked there for 5 years and worked very closely with Destination DC and Elliot Ferguson, who's our president and CEO. And the transition over 17 years ago, and have been promoting Washington since then. So it's been a fun journey. It's one of those experiences where, like you said, once you come into it, it's very hard to leave.
It really is. It really is. Indeed. And of course, most of that time presumably was in and around the DC area, even with Marriott. Yeah.
Actually, I was born and raised here, and I've never left. I've traveled, but I've never found reason to leave. Now, everybody in my family has left me. They all live in different parts of the country now, but I'm the last woman standing here in DC. But I haven't found a reason to leave. Maybe one day. We'll see.
Wow. Why would you? So that leads us quite nicely into our next question. Obviously, a fantastic city in which you were born, and you've been in, for so many years. So what is it, what's it like to live and work in what really is the powerhouse that is the capital city of, almost of the world in some regards? How is that? It must be amazing.
Yeah, it's great. I think Washington sometimes gets a bad reputation for only being a political town. And it's funny because when you live here, politics is actually on the perimeter. I could go out to any restaurant or bar and sit next to a congressman and I would have no clue.
Wow.
I think that's probably a little different than LA, where you would sit next to a celebrity and know exactly who they are. But it's DC is such an incredible town, and it's come a very long way from when I was a child growing up in the suburbs, and it's become an incredible food city, which is near and dear to my heart. I love working my way around, the neighborhoods that are ethnic and like we have a very strong Ethiopian population here, and the restaurants are absolutely incredible. So that's one of my favorite things to do. It's very multicultural. Growing up here, I was exposed to that diversity and that culture and that global kind of perspective from a very early age. And I think that kind of makes Washingtonians a little bit more worldly and have a much broader perspective on things. There was a publication recently. It was quite entertaining. It said that Washingtonians are very smart, but not very attractive people. So I'm not
Wow.
sure about that, but well, I want to know how they did their polling.
Wow. Yes. No, for sure. Wow, that's great. I mean, yeah, that sounds like I've been to DC myself sort of 3 times now. And there's a couple of things, if you've seen any of the other IBTM meets, the themes that come out. And one of those for me, certainly when I went to DC, was really the broad nature of how many great people are there. And that really builds a really nice fabric to a city. So the feel of the city was amazing. And the second thing, of course, was actually it was in DC that I first got my first taste of the American slow cooked meat scene. So, your slow barbecues. And I have to say, to this day, I still remember that. And that was one of the greatest experiences. A restaurant in DC, the name of which escapes me. It's probably not even there anymore. That was a great thing.
It's definitely evolved as a food scene. And unfortunately, the current time, we've seen a couple of our good restaurants, go by the wayside, but that just makes room for more slow cooked meats in the future.
That's it. Well, we'll look forward to that. That's for sure. Great. And then, so I suppose, obviously a great city, as we know, but what is maybe the biggest draw for events coming into DC?
Yeah, it's from the business standpoint, it kind of still lends itself to that intellect. We started a campaign a couple of years ago called Connected Capital, and connected is really that word that we use to epitomize Washington, because you're connected to the knowledge, to industry and ideas, to politics. As much as sometimes we try and stay away from it, it is one of our biggest assets and our greatest assets. And so, connected is really that idea that Washington, D.C. is one of the few places where you can get everybody in the same room together. So you can get these powerhouse, intellects to come and be speakers, where perhaps they might not be able to get on a plane, and you can do that very effectively in our own backyard. And so I think that's probably one of the greatest things that draws events to DC. And then, of course, the access. It's
Sure.
Access in its traditional sense with our airports and our train system, and being very drivable for those domestically, or those just traversing between the East Coast of the United States. But it's access to open spaces, which people don't expect in a metropolitan city. It's access to cultural institutions. And access to things where it's the added local flair that makes events a little bit more organic to where you're meeting.
Right. Yeah, that's very true. I can totally understand that. Having visited myself, you can see that. And I was amazed at how green the city was. It's certainly something that you can probably not say of a lot of US cities, in fairness. But certainly in DC, you do get that really nice balance of a lot of open and green space too.
Yeah. People are always, when they come here for the first time, the words out of their mouth is, "Wow, I had no idea." So that should almost be our tagline.
Exactly. I was one of those, so I confess to that as well. So in a city with so much culture, history, and certainly in a political sense, there must be some really, really great sort of maybe slightly more unusual venues.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any that you can think of? And maybe if you have a favorite?
Yeah, definitely. Well, we're a membership organization, so I'm not allowed to say that I have a favorite, but I have those that I maybe think about more than others. But Washington's very interesting in that we have 170 plus embassies in the area. But I think that the venues that stand out more to me, there's one called Hillwood. And I'm not sure if it's not a very popular venue, just in terms of the common knowledge. Everybody thinks of Smithsonian first and foremost.
Okay.
But Hillwood was the former home of Marjorie Merriweather Post. And she might not be more worldwide known, but she was the heir to a food corporation.
Okay.
And he actually kind of made marrying a habit, let's say. But she was a very wealthy woman in her own right. But she also married some very interesting powerhouse men throughout her career. And one of those individuals, her third husband, I believe, They went through and they started a very interesting collection of Fabergé eggs. And so her former home, which is now basically a living museum, she has absolutely incredible gardens. It's a wonderful place to do tea. They have a museum. They typically have very exquisite exhibitions going on. They just recently closed one on Cartier. And her home itself is also filled with just absolutely incredible art. So that's one of my favorites. And then in the more traditional sense, I don't think anybody can leave the city without walking through the Library of Congress. It's absolutely hands down one of my favorites. From the marble entryway and the inlaid ceilings. If you're doing a special dinner for, sponsors or donors or your board, it's absolutely one of the best in the city to take advantage of.
Wow, that sounds great. It feels like it just makes me want to get on a plane if only we could.
With lots of Purell. With lots of Purell.
Absolutely, yes, indeed. Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's really, really good. And then, and maybe coming back to events as well, from venues to events. So which, if there is one, I know you've probably hosted so many business events down the years as a city, of course. But is there one in particular that maybe sticks out as having had a major impact on DC itself as a city? So almost reversing the notion, I suppose.
Yeah, it's actually one that we host over and over again, which is the inauguration.
Right.
I think which is probably one of the largest scale business events that we hosted.
Absolutely, yeah.
Years. Coming up on one soon in January. And inauguration is really interesting because it tests the city in ways that no other business event can, because it's on such a macro scale, right? It doesn't just hit one venue. It's all throughout the city, between a parade, the actual swearing in ceremony, which takes place on the National Mall. It's our convention center plays host to typically between 4 and 6 of the official inaugural balls. And so you get to see the convention center in a very different light, set for, the exquisite evening rather than a trade show or an event. And it's very interesting in the security aspect. And I think that's something that Washington, D.C. probably does better than any other city around the world, from hosting nuclear summits to it could be a medical association meeting in the convention center, and they will have the president or the vice president coming and speaking. And so, Secret Service does sweeps on a constant basis. So, having the inauguration is really an example of how the city can come together in a very collaborative feel and hit all different, parts of the city. And one of my favorite memories from inauguration is when the Obamas did their first inauguration in the convention center. There's an absolutely incredible photograph of the two of them in the freight elevator of the convention.
Oh, wow.
End of a very long night. They're dressed to the nines, clearly exhausted, having been on the go all day long. But here they are in this kind of very raw, very industrial, massive freight elevator. And it's just the two of them together with kind of a Secret Service guy off in the corner. And it's one of the best photographs that they have of the presidential history here in DC.
Oh, for sure. That must be great to see that. Can you imagine? There's if only the walls could talk, I suppose.
Right. Yeah.
Great. No, that sounds super. And of course, that kind of scale and hosting an event like that, that makes it child's play almost to host any other event, I would imagine, right?
We don't take any event for granted. This one actually poses its own interesting challenge, and looking forward to seeing how we're going to tackle that moving forward, and not just from a safety and security standpoint, but kind of reinvent the whole way that we do things. So looking forward to seeing what IBTM brings to the table in November.
Indeed, yes. There are lots of questions around that. And, we're very, very optimistic as well, of course, that the event will go ahead. But I think it's fair to say, and it's a given, and in fact, that, the events will look a bit different. And that's what we're working through at the minute. But yeah, we've got lots of plates spinning, lots of scenarios going. And I think, we will make sure everybody meets again. And that's our number one aim, but of course safely and with the best intentions for everybody concerned in the industry. But we're very excited about it. We're working very closely with all the partners, as you would, and things are looking very positive and optimistic, I'm pleased to say.
Good.
Great. Good.
That was an easy answer.
Yes, indeed. And yeah, so maybe coming back, so I'm intrigued to know, I've watched a lot of TV series around political dramas, and so, where do we begin with those, right? But do you have a favorite political bar or hangout?
So in DC, I would say the bar that's kind of more of a local institution is something called Old Ebbitt. Perhaps you dined there.
What was it, sorry?
Old Ebbitt Grill.
No, I haven't.
So it's where probably more tourists tend to go because of, it's one of the oldest bars and restaurants in Washington. They have incredible oysters, but locals like to go there too because it does have a really good bar scene. But it's for me, I'm a sucker for a high-end cocktail bar at a hotel, and that's really here in DC or anywhere around the world. That's typically where you can find me. And there's two in the city that I really, really love. And one is it's called the Round Robin, and it's in the Willard, which is actually that hotel was where we coined the term lobbying. So the Willard in its own right is a kind of an institution. And then my favorite is actually a bar called Off the Record, which is a great name in its own right. And it's in the historic Hay Adams Hotel that overlooks the White House.
Oh, wow.
And so it's just kind of a great bar. It's, it's got these beautiful red walls, and it's a good place to just get dressed up and have a martini or two on a Tuesday or whenever.
Brilliant. That sounds amazing. To that, I've noted down, Melissa, that next time I'm in DC, we should maybe check those out. So
my treat.
Yeah, definitely. Good. Okay. Well, I think that probably pretty much concludes sort of having a chat today. So, as I say again, it's great to catch up, more informal than anything. It's great to get those insights on DC. As with all of these, Melissa, I think now it just makes me want to get back to traveling and getting out to see all the things I'm listening to and all the places that are being listed, more so than ever. So we hope to be able to do that soon. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining today. It's great to have had you here and learn a lot more about your amazing city. It's great to have someone, who is so passionate about the destination. And of course, unlike many of us, I suppose, certainly me with London, not born and bred as you were. So, that's really, really great to hear, and to see that city develop over that time must be amazing. So, as I say, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. And we hope to see you very, very soon in December, of course, at IBTM World. Until then, hopefully I'll see you at another live event actually before then. But until then, stay safe. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll catch up very soon.
Thanks, Shane, and my regards to the whole IBTM team. Thanks so much.
Likewise. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon. Take care, Melissa.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.